In this lesson, we're taking a look at pattern 5 of the minor pentatonic scale. This is the final pattern, and like all the others, we're going to take a look at the scale shape, the root notes and intervals, the finger options, the bending options, and learn a lick in this pattern so you can quickly start turning it into music. These videos are part of my minor pentatonic lesson series, which you can find a link for in the description. I covered a bunch of the theory and terminology about this scale in the first lesson, so check that out if you haven't already. You'll also find a link to my Patreon page where you can download backing tracks, guitar tabs, and diagrams to help you practice the material in these lessons. But for now, let's dive in and take a look at pattern 5. So just like pattern 1, we're going to have our lowest root note on the low E string. However, this time the bulk of the scale is going to be located in the direction of the headstock rather than the body of the guitar. And just to follow on from the other videos in this series, we're going to stick in the key of A, and I'm going to use this higher octave to demonstrate the pattern, but it's also perfectly playable in this key in a lower octave, so I'll show you how that works later, as well as how it connects to pattern 1. For now though, let's take a look at this pattern, and it really is a nice, simple, symmetrical pattern that's pretty simple to memorize. So we're going to start with the root note played by third finger on the 17th fret of the low E string. This is the note A. Following this, it's going to be first finger on 15th fret A string, third finger on 17th fret A string. After this, first finger is going to do this shift back, which we've seen a few times in the previous patterns. So first finger is now going to move to the 14th fret of the D string, followed by third finger still on the 17th fret on the D string. First finger stays on that 14th fret when moving on to G string, and third finger stays on the 17th fret when moving on to G string. Then back on the top two strings, we're back to tone gaps. So first finger is playing the 15th fret of the B string. Third finger is playing the 17th fret of B string. And then once again, we've got first finger on 15th fret high E, third finger on 17th fret high E. And then we descend all the way back down to the root note. And then we've got one extra note just below the root note here with the first finger on the 15th fret low E, and then resolve back up to the root note with that third finger on the 17th fret. And that gives you one full scale cycle. So if I say the fret names as I'm playing it, we'd have 17th fret low E, then moving on to the A, 15, 17, then 14, 17, 14, 17, 15, 17, 15, 17, and then you should practice descending as well, so back down those frets. And then remember, when you get to the bottom, to complete the full cycle, we've got to go 17th fret, which is the root note on the bottom string, down below the root note to the first finger 15, and then back up to the root note on 17. And I'll just play through the scale once without talking so you can hear the sound of it. And that is your pattern 5 scale cycle. And just to explain in the lower octave, obviously the 5th fret of the low E string is also the note A, so if we use that as the root note now, I'm going to place third finger on that fret and play the same pattern. So you should be able to see that the shape is exactly the same, just every note sounds an octave lower because we're further down the neck. But this 5th fret is also the root note for pattern 1, if you remember the first lesson of the series. So if I play up pattern 1, that's probably quite familiar to most players. We can link these two scales together with that root note and shift into pattern 5. So really the point I'm making here is that you shouldn't think of patterns 1 and 5 as the start and the end of the pentatonic scale. You should think of them as a continuous cycle where you can flow between them, kind of like a conveyor belt system. And likewise, if you move up into the higher octave and play pattern 5, you could then go even higher and start again from pattern 1. Obviously it would sound an octave higher than it does down the end of the neck. Taking a look at the root notes and intervals now, and we've already discussed the root note on the low E string, which in this pattern, in the upper octave in the key of A, is going to be the 17th fret. The octave up of this root note is going to be the first finger playing the 14th fret of the G string, so the lower note in pitch on the G in this pattern. So that's the next A note, and if we play the 5 notes of the pentatonic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the next one is the first root note for the next octave. And this is also the same root note that we find in pattern 4. So if I quickly play up pattern 4, there it is, and here's pattern 5. Exactly the same note, so you can use that as a bit of a reference point for linking those two patterns together. And the final root note, just like in pattern 1 where we had a root note on the bottom string, we also end up with one on the top string because they're both tuned to E. So here we've got 17th fret low E root note, and obviously we must have the same on the high E, so 17th fret high E is the top root note of this pattern. And just to fill in all the other intervals, we're starting with the root note on the 17th fret low E, then we're going minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, minor 7th, and then next octave, root note, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, minor 7th, then the root note, and all the way back down. We've got that root note on the bottom, then just below it we've got one extra little minor 7th, and then we'd go back up to resolve on the root. Taking a look at the finger options now, and I think if you're playing this pattern in a key where it's high up like this one, I would try and play the whole pattern just with fingers 1 and 3. It's very doable and makes it very convenient just keeping the same fingers. However, you might have noticed before when I played in the lower octave that I actually used first and little finger on the middle 2 strings where they've got that 3 fret stretch. If I just show you that in this octave for now, I'd be starting with fingers 1 and 3. Then as first finger shifts back, little finger comes in and plays that higher note on the middle 2 strings. But then I can shift back to first and third finger for easy access to the top strings. Sometimes you might see players actually sticking to a 1 finger per fret system and using fingers 2 and 4 on the strings where there's only a tone jump. However, I think for most licks and also for the ability to flow between patterns, prioritizing fingers 1 and 3 is generally a little bit better. I've got some videos coming up soon about good ways to do that. Taking a look at string bends now, and in my experience bends are generally a little bit less common in this pattern compared to other patterns, but that's not to say that there aren't some good examples out there, and there are definitely some options that you can consider. The first one being a tone bend on the higher note on the G string, which in this pattern would be the 17th fret, bending up to the sound of the 19th fret. As well as this, we can also bend the higher pitched notes on the top 2 strings, but to stick strictly to the pentatonic scale, we'd have to bend them both up a tone and a half. So this would be on B string and high E string, bending the 17th fret up to the sound of the 20th. And then same on top string. So you can throw those into your licks, and also remember the top note of the scale, this 17th fret high E, is also a root note. So like when we've done a string bend on the root note in other patterns, you can also bend up a tone to the 2nd degree of the key. It's not technically in the pentatonic scale, but it is still in the key. So you can throw that one in if it fits the context. You've just got to use your ears and use the right string bend for the right situation. And now it's time to take a look at our pattern 5 lick, and for the final lick of the series we're just going to keep it super simple with a fun repeating lick that you can quite easily get up to high speed. You'll have seen it a little bit in the demo, it sounds like this. And what we're doing here is we're barring the 15th fret on the top 2 strings with the first finger, but then the first actual note of the lick is going to be 3rd finger playing 17th fret top string, so give that one a pick and then pull off to the first finger. After this, we're going to do exactly the same thing on the B string, so pick the 3rd finger note on the 17th fret, then pull off to the first finger, and the lick is literally just them 4 notes repeated over and over again, so pick, pull off, pick, pull off. And it's quite an easy one to speed up, you can do it to a metronome. make it fit whatever backing track or song that you're playing along with. And in terms of picking, you want to be using some form of alternate picking here, whether it's inward or outward picking. I've got a video on that which I'll link in the cards, so you can dive a little bit deeper into the picking if you're interested. We're just using 16th notes here, so just 1 E and 2 E and. So you can introduce this lick at low tempos and it'll still sound pretty fast and energetic. And just a tip on getting out of this lick, because sometimes when you get into them fast repeater style licks, they can be a little bit tricky to get out of. Quite a good ending for this one after we've done a few cycles is actually just to pick the top string without the third finger down, so just under that first finger bar, and hammer the third finger down, and then resolve on the root note. And you can keep the lick going for as long as you want, as long as it feels right in the musical context, and then resolve with that top note. So. And remember, you can download the backing tracks on my Patreon page to practice all of these licks. They're just titled Groove in A, and they come in straight or swung feel with a variety of tempos, so they just help you perfect your licks in different musical situations before you integrate them into songs and maybe backing tracks with a few more chords involved. I hope that's helped you get to grips with pattern 5. I've said in every video that you should focus on each pattern separately, but this being the final pattern, you should have them all down by now, which is a great tool to have at your disposal as a guitar player, but still make sure to give pattern 5 the time it deserves, get really comfortable with it, and then start working on linking all the patterns together. And on that note, I've got some videos coming up about connecting the pentatonic scales together and kind of expanding your capabilities with this scale, as well as some more licks to add to your repertoire. But do also check out the song lessons on my channel. Plenty of them will use the minor pentatonic scale, so that's a great way to increase your knowledge and ability at the same time as learning and playing some fun songs. Remember, you can find the link to the full Minor Pentatonic series in the description, as well as my Patreon page where you can download those extra resources. Be sure to subscribe for more lessons, and I'd really appreciate you giving the video a like if you found it helpful, and I'll see you for more lessons soon.